Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Today, I'm going to run a conversation we had with Commanders running backs coach Randy Jordan at a recent media day session. There was a couple weeks ago, we had the opportunity to talk to all the assistant coaches down inside the cafeteria. So you are going to hear some background noise during this interview. Bear with it. It's okay. You'll be okay. You can still get the insight from him, and it's actually still good enough audio that you can certainly hear him clearly what he's saying, and the background noise that adds some ambiance. So just take it like that. Anyway, the whole point of it is to get some insight into the running backs. Brian Robinson, a lot on Brian Robinson, a lot on Chris Rodriguez, obviously a little bit on Antonio Gibson as well. So one of the guys that we didn't talk about was Keim Hunt. I'm going to talk about him right now. And that's kind of why I want to run this conversation with Randy. And by the way, Sam Fortier from the Washington Post is also on there asking a couple questions. Eventually it was just Randy and I, but for the first few minutes, Sam was there as well. And then he left and went somewhere else. And then it was just Randy and I, but just for like the last half of it. Anyway, just wanted to let you know. So Sam always asks some good questions. So Keim Hunt. Now there was a report late last week about how the Commanders were apparently quietly looking into him. And, and of course you get questions like, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? I would just say right now, I'd be surprised if it did. However, I'm not ruling anything out. I'm not shooting anything down, but I would just say I'm surprised based on what I know, which is when I talked to a couple of people over there. One person said he hadn't heard his name come up. Someone else who was definitely in the know, said that he had no clue where that was coming from. Now, one thing that was pointed out to me is that Eric Bieniemy and Keim Hunt are pretty close. So there's going to be a natural connection there. And, if they're looking into him, well, Bieniemy clearly already knows him pretty well. So I would say just kind of slow down on some of that. Certainly if anything was there, I certainly didn't get the feeling that anything was happening imminently or anything like that. Now, if Bieniemy goes to them and says, hey, this is a guy that could really, really help, then of course you have to listen. I don't know that that's happened. But again, people who are definitely in the know said they have no clue where that was coming from. So take that for what it's worth. Anyway, one thing I would say is, would it even make sense? Because again, there is a relationship there. Now, to me, where it would make sense is if in training camp, one of these guys goes down, because I don't know with Hunt, where is his game at right now? Cleveland has no interest in re-signing him. I think the feeling sounds like, and according to a couple of people I'll talk to, sounds like the Browns feel like he may have lost a step or two, but that he would be a good backup, which is what he'd have to be here. Now, if you're Hunt, do you want to come here where, what is your play time going to look like? Because you have Brian Robinson and Gibson. And again, you have to look at, when people hear Keim Hunt, they start thinking the Chiefs Keim Hunt. He ain't that guy anymore. So, he's going to be 28 before this season starts. There's more mileage on him, et cetera. Here's a little bit thing from you look at last year. Keim Hunt had 678 yards from scrimmage. Antonio Gibson had 899. Gibson had 46 catches, 7.7 yards per catch. Hunt had 35 for 6.0 per catch. Now, you can sit there and say, well, he played for the Browns at offense, whatever. Hey, listen, Gibson played here, all right? So you know what this offense has been like too. So, if anybody had that sort of line of thinking, I think I would curb that one, because the whole reason why Bieniemy is here is because nobody liked that offense last year and how he was used. They want to see him used more. So anyway, I think that's one thing to keep in mind. And then when you look at it, like the reason I wanted to play Jordan too is, and it's not a video with Jordan, it is just an audio, but one of the reasons I wanted to play it is because, like, listen to how he talks about a Brian Robinson and listen to how he talks about Chris Rodriguez. Rodriguez, by the way, whom Bieniemy really liked before the draft. The reason why Rodriguez is here is because of Bieniemy. So understand all that. With Robinson, one of the things that Jordan talks about is like there's a couple plays that he points to in particular about like what he can do when he gets right. And he even said that Robinson told him, you never saw what I could fully do last season. So, just when so you have to keep that in mind. The other thing though, that Jordan talked about in this offense for a running back, what's important is to understand how to run routes. And so I think that's going to be I think that was a key part of what they were doing this spring, is really kind of getting into the route running aspect with the backs. You saw a lot of work with that before practice in individual sessions, especially with Robinson and Gibson. And then you'd see it in the group sessions, and then you'd see it in teamwork. And that was a major point of emphasis. And with this offense, and one of the things that Jordan talked about is the need to understand route discipline and where you fit into the route scheme and why you need to be in a certain place. Because everything here, a lot of it here is predicated on creating yards after the catch. That's going to be important for receivers like a Jahan Dotson, big time. And I think Gibson is going to be a guy that can get a lot of that as well. So, I think that's one of the things. Now, of course, a guy like Kareem Hunt would understand all of that. But is he going to be better for you than some of these other guys right now? Well, again, if somebody gets hurt in camp, of course it would make sense. But I certainly didn't get the sense that there was something like, oh yeah, there's all this going on. It's going to be close, and watch for it in the next couple of weeks. Didn't get any of that. And again, I said, you heard what I got. So take that for what it's worth. And, but I also wanted to point out too, with Gibson, they're very excited about what he showed this spring. Again, shorts and pads, I get that. But I think it's how they feel he can be used in this offense and how his talent can be maximized in this offense. And you saw the spring moving him around a little bit more. I know you've heard this last couple of years, but always in the spring or in the fall, it didn't come to fruition the way people thought it might. Now, I think he's been a good player for them, but I also think that at times you watch him like, whoa, you watch that play against Buffalo where they had took the screen for touchdowns. Like, that's pretty explosive. He still can be that guy. And so I think in this offense with this screen game, I think he can be a dangerous player for them. And you look at I think the versatility of the sets they can run with guys like Gibson, and even Robinson, is you can put them, if you really want to get crazy, you could put the 4 tight ends out there and get one running back. And how are you going to counter that as a defense, and who's going to cover who, and what package you're going to run? Now, I don't know how often you could really do that, but I think there's some affordable, I think guys like Gibson afford you that versatility. Clearly a guy like Hunt would, but I think you still get that with Gibson. And I do think one of the things that Jordan talked about was Robinson catching the ball better than what he had envisioned. So you can hear all that in a minute, but I did want to point out some of that stuff. And I think when you watch Robinson, the numbers weren't always indicative of, I think, where he can get to in this game, because again, he was coming back from a brutal situation with the gunshots. And then it's also, not only that, but now you're still learning the offense, learning how to run as an NFL player. And I'd be curious to see how he is used in the pass game. He doesn't have to be this dynamic runner, but he has to be effective with it, because when one of the guys that Jordan talked about was a guy like Roger Craig, back, who played with the 49ers, for those of you who remember, was a really good pass catching back. But I think you need to be a dual threat with this offense, and in this particular style of offense. And I think, again, a guy like Gibson can be that. Can Rodriguez be that guy? I think they hope he can develop into a guy who can be a threat on all 3 downs. I don't see him being certainly not like Antonio Gibson, but I think could he be a little bit more like a Robinson, who can be a 3-down guy, because he learns to be a good pass catcher and pass protector. But also, again, the route running is a big key. It's not just how are the hands, it's how is he at route running. And I think that's where Gibson gets a big edge, because he's pretty good in that area. So just wanted to let you fill you in on all that. And again, Randy will kind of walk through some of the stuff, and I think you'll enjoy the interview with him and get some insight into some of these guys. But also, because it's Father's Day, I'm taping this on Father's Day, and I played the Sam Howell interview the other day, and we talked about Father's Day, and I forgot to say to everybody out there, hey, happy Father's Day. I hope you had a great one. Listen, I'm a blessed person. I've got 3 great kids, healthy, and the best job that I ever could have is being a dad to them. And so that is the number one thing that I like about it. And it's, you share your love of sports. My youngest is a dancer. He's a fantastic dancer. You share a love of the arts, all that great stuff. It's great being a dad. So one of the things, for me, and so I just want to point that out. And the best thing that I treasure in my life is being a dad and a husband. Anyway, but as a kid, what I remember with my own dad, things weren't always great. All right. But one of the things I remember is, you look back on my career, and how did I end up in this place? And why did I have this love to go down this road to become a sports writer, to cover the NFL? And what I remember when I was a kid, and I'd go out in the backyard, I'd have a little Cleveland Browns helmet. I actually had a couple different helmets. I remember I had a Joe Namath, the Jets helmet as well. And I'd go in the backyard and play a pretend game by myself. And, I mean, I was like 4 or 5 years old. And you put the little pads on the helmet, you go run around. My dad would be out there, but then I would have him go down in the basement with me, pretend that was a locker room, and I'd have him interview me. And then I'd draw on this little blue sheets of paper some pictures of a football player, and they probably were pretty bad stick figures, but that's what it was. And I draw these squiggly lines for which was supposed to be like copy. And it was, I guess, some of the first stories I wrote, some of the first, media sessions I was a part of. But on this one, I was the guy being asked questions. Eventually, I realized I wasn't going to be the guy being asked the questions. I would be the guy asking the questions. Anyways, that was kind of where a love of that was all born. And also, for the NFL, we had season tickets to the Browns games. And for those of you who don't know, I did grow up in Cleveland. So, grew up as a passionate fan. And that's why one of the reasons I feel like I'm really lucky is to cover a team that has a passionate fan base. And I still think that it does. I think, and I think you guys will eventually be rewarded with this new ownership group. So it's why I'm happy for you that there's going to be this change. Anyway, so we used to have Cleveland Browns season tickets. And way back in the day, I was going to games like most of the home games when I was 4 years old. I'd go on my dad's shoulders, and because we sat in the bleachers, I'd go on the shoulders. I didn't have to have a ticket because I was a little guy. And so we just go through the turnstile and I kind of squeeze in and all that. And one of the things I always wished I could do is take my kids to games. And then I realized, like, life is different for me and my relationship with them was great. And it's like, I didn't have to have that. But it's also like, you just didn't. This was my job. There's nothing you can do. And then I also remember, then you look at like the cost of it now and just what goes on there. It's like, I'm okay. Anyway, but I did treasure going to those games, and it's a great memory with my dad, my brothers. And, so it was just something that I always enjoyed. But I do look back on, when you look where you're at in your career, you look back to those early moments and like, how did you get here? Why did you get here? And that was part of what helped me learn the game, helped me grow a love for the game. And even when I watched the games as a fan in the bleachers, we were halfway up and halfway across. We split the uprights. So I had, my vantage point was as a safety. I grew up to play a safety. One of my older brothers grew up to play safety. He played in college. So, that it was just, but it really helped develop that love for the game. And it was great. So, and I'm happy that I had that opportunity to grow up going to a lot of NFL games and leading to a career where I go to NFL games. Yes, I feel pretty lucky. But anyways, for all you fathers out there, happy Father's Day, belated by the time you hear this. So if you have some Father's Day memories that you want to leave on the YouTube page, go ahead and do that and share away. So I just want to share some of that. So thanks for bearing with me. Now, here's our conversation. Again, Sam Fortier from the Washington Post was also there with me, with Commanders running backs coach Randy Jordan.
The adventure park is ziplining through the trees. It's climbing from platform to platform. It's even an axe throwing competition with your friends. But what the adventure park really is opportunity. Reconnecting with friends and family, accomplishing a challenge, and making lasting memories. So book your visit today and choose your own adventure.
Yeah, excited. Just another year with B-Rob for a whole season. Yeah. For a whole season. And then we got AG who's doing a great job, and then when you talk about the addition of Chris from Kentucky, gives you some added needed depth in the position. And really all the guys has done a tremendous job in terms of embracing this new system, in terms of not only from the run game standpoint, but also from the standpoint of the passing game, and also how we practice. So it's been really fun to watch them attack this, and we're just trying to continue to chop wood.
What's the biggest change for them to get used to in this system?
Well, I think I played in this system, and it's a system that goes back to Bill Walsh, obviously with the West Coast system. And I think the biggest thing is the discipline of routes, depth, discipline, right? Being where you need to be, right? How you affect coverage. I think that's the biggest thing when you look at the system, the West Coast itself, because you have to be in certain spots so that the spacing is such where now other guys can have success.
Right.
So that's the thing that we're really trying to pound is just the discipline that it takes to be a good route runner.
More than other systems?
Well, I think
and why would that be?
I
more
think
than-
I think the biggest thing is when you look at this system, traditionally it's always been friendly in terms of just the halfback being integral in the passing game. If you go back to
Roger Craig.
history, Roger Craig, right? I mean, you look at it, and if you're where you're supposed to be, right, the quarterback, to me, tight ends and running backs are such where they can be very quarterback friendly because the proximity, to me, you're closer to who? You're closer to the quarterback. You know, you're talking about maybe 10, 15, 5 yards compared to you throwing the ball down the field. And so I always tell them, I said, be where you're supposed to be so that quarterback can account for you if he needs to in terms of in the passing game.
I know you want all your guys to be able to do everything, but I guess with the addition of Chris and the departure of JD, it seems, or the way that I've been thinking about it is, do you use AG now more how you use JD in the past? Does he kind of slide into that role?
Well, I think the biggest thing is right now when I look at this, what we're trying to do is we're trying to give these guys an opportunity to show what they can do.
For sure.
So when you talk about a JD role, right, where he was a guy that's 2 minute, third down, all that kind of stuff, I think that will come. And what I've challenged these guys, everybody has to know what to do on every situation.
Right.
So it could be a B-Rob, it could be a AG, it could be a J. Will, it could be, it could be Chris, it could be any of those guys.
Right.
I think the biggest thing is for us is to continue to chop wood, to continue to be disciplined in the pass game, everything that we're trying to do, and that will surface in its own time. But the biggest thing is making sure we master the offense.
Do you think we ever saw Brian Robinson you thought you would see? Did we ever see him last year?
He said, I'm just speaking for him. He said he's like, Coach, you didn't see the real me. I said, well, damn it, let's see the real you this year. But no, seriously, I think when you look at what he's done from the standpoint of what he went through as a player, and not only the physical part, but the mental toughness that it takes to come back. Like right now, he's eating, he's sleeping, trying to learn the system, just like everybody else is. And I'm really excited to see what that he can do with a full season and a full camp behind him.
What do you think, like in terms of how that situation affected him? What things, maybe by the end of the year you were seeing, and what things might you expect to see now that it'll be a year removed from it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when you look at him, one of the things that we really liked about him was his vision, his ability to set blocks and be able to turn a 2-yard block play into a 6 or 7 yard run. Now, for the naked eye, the viewer, he just got 6 or 7 yards. Well, shit, we only blocked for 2, right? So that's something that as the season went along, oh shit, that's the cut that I'm looking for. Oh, that's the patience that I'm looking for. I'll give you an example. When we were playing, I think it was Atlanta, we threw the ball to him on a little swing route, and he ran. I mean, like literally, to be able to run a human being over, like that's the hardest thing in football. You got to run a human being over, and then to move another man off a spot when you're blocking, that's hard. Like most people can't do that. So when I saw that, I was like, yep, that's what I saw. And so we're just trying to build on that in terms of him being comfortable in the system, run game and pass game wise. Because I'm gonna just tell you this: the guy catches the ball better than what I. Yeah, he catches the ball better than when I watched it on tape because he was a runner.
Right.
And so now he's catching the ball and. So we're not trying to put any necessarily body in a box. We're just trying to make sure that we're getting to that.
I wasn't trying to put anybody in a box. I was just thinking he has that skill set, that background as the receiver.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm Chris Rodriguez. What are some of
No
what are some of the things you've seen from him so far? What stood out to you?
Runs heavy. He runs heavy. It's easy. He's easy, and he's smart. He's a smart kid. I mean, I say kid. He's a young man.
I say kid all the time.
Yeah. But he's football. He's got a really high football IQ, and he works extremely hard. But you can see glimpses. He's not. But none of these guys are finished product. So the biggest thing is I stress with him is alignment, assignment, and adjustment. The 3 A's, AAA. It's alignment. What do I align in the formation? What's my assignment? What's my job? And then once all those two things come together and the ball snaps, the picture changes, do I have the ability to adjust? And we work on that every day.
He seemed like, even just watching some of the stuff at Kentucky, really decisive one-cut guy. How, and I know like the big thing is being physical, but like he also seems to have that aspect.
Yeah, and the thing, when you say one cut, right, he has a great feel for interior running.
Right.
Where like he can run and he'll get kind of skinny in the hole. It's real subtle.
Yeah.
And then he falls and he grinds out. He gets hit for 3, then he falls for another 3, so he gets 6 yards. Right. And I think when he's going to be at his best is when he has pads on, just like all of these guys. And then now you can be able to really say, oh shoot, okay, that's why we like him so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No
Always,
you doing all right?
enjoy it. Yeah. How about yourself?
Hey man, Tiff here.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to you for listening, and thanks to Randy Jordan and all the other assistant coaches for their time. I'll be running some more of those interviews with some of those assistant coaches, not all of them, but a couple of them. And then I also have an interview coming up sometime probably over this week that I'm going to play with Anthony Boone, who is Sam Howell's offseason quarterbacks coach. Had some really good insight into what they worked on, why, and just some of his thoughts on how and what he knows about him. He's worked with the guy since he was a freshman in high school. He knows him pretty well. So I'll be playing that one pretty soon as well. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.